Hello everyone. On this video we will look at adding and subtracting mixed numbers with unlike or different denominators. Okay. Now the steps are very similar to the adding and subtracting of fractions with unlike denominators. So if you want to, you can go back and do that one first. I actually recommend it, but let's say for example you have 5 minus 3 over 4. Now really, if you have a whole number and a fraction, it's easier than it is with two fractions. Because if you have two fractions, you have to find the least common denominator. But if you have a whole number and a fraction, there's only one denominator. So your least common denominator is that only denominator, which in this case is 4. So your least common denominator is 4. So you have that without doing any other work. All right. So the one additional thing you want to remember is that 5 is just equal to 5 over 1. So if you have 5 minus 3 over 4, that's the same as 5 over 1 minus 3 over 4. Now 3 over 4 is already equal to our least common denominator. You have a 4 here. What do you multiply by 1 to get it to equal our least common denominator? Well, you multiply 1 by 4. This way both the denominators would match. So you have 5 over 1 minus 3 over 4. Let's multiply this by 4 over 4. So that gives you 4 times 5 over 4 times 1 minus 3 over 4. 4 times 5 is 20, so you have 20 over 4 minus 3 over 4. You have your same denominators, so that's just going to be 20 minus 3 over 4, which is 17 over 4. Now, if you want to convert that to an improper fraction, a mixed number rather, it's already an improper fraction, that would be 4 and 1/4 when written as a mixed number. So that means that 5 minus 3 over 4 is 4 and 1/4. All right. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. All right, so let's say for this example, we have 9 minus 3 over 5. And what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and press pause and try to work this one out on your own. All right, so assuming you've pressed pause and worked it out, remember you have a whole number and you have a fraction. So when you're looking for the least common denominator and you only have one denominator, you know your least common denominator is that denominator, in this case 5. Okay, so since we know that 9 is equal to 9 over 1, you have 9 over 1 minus 3 over 5. Now this denominator is already equal to your least common denominator. So how do we make 1 equal 5? You multiply by 5. So you have 9 over 1 times 5 over 5. Remember, whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do it to the numerator. Minus 3 over 5. Okay, so you have 5 times 9 over 5 times 1 minus 3 over 5. Okay, so 5 times 9 is 45 over 5 times 1, which is 5, minus 3 over 5. Since our denominators match, we just subtract our numerator, so 45 minus 3 over 5 gives us 42 over 5. And if we convert that to a mixed number, that's 8 and 2/5. And that is your answer. So that means that 9 minus 3/5 is equal to 8 and 2/5. Move that up. There we go. All right. So if you are still working on this one or writing this down, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. And what if we have 2 and 7/16 plus 3/4? Okay, so we don't have a whole number anymore. We actually have a mixed number and a fraction. Okay. Now, with this, we don't have to rewrite the whole thing. Or if you wanted to, you could rewrite it as an improper fraction. But sometimes that can create a very big numerator, depending on how big your whole number is. So if you had like 27 here, and you wanted to make this an improper fraction and then match up, you have 16 times 27 plus 7, it would get a really big number. So what we're going to do is we're just going to match up the fractional part of it. Okay, so first, rewrite fractions or fractional part with like denominators. All right, so that's our 7 over 16 and 3 over 4. So we know that 16 is equal to 4 times 4. And 4 is just 4 times 1. Okay, so 7 over 16 and 3/4, that's going to be 7 over 4 times 4 and 3 over 4 times 1. Okay, so these two match. So you're not going to do anything there. You have a second 4 here, but you don't have 1 over here. So we're going to go ahead and multiply it. You have a 1 here, and again, you don't have to do the ones if you don't want to, but I'm just going to do it anyway. So you have a 1 here, not 1 there. So you're going to multiply that across. You have 7 over 4 times 4 and 3 over 4 times 1. Remember, this 4 is underlined, so that means you're going to multiply this one by 4 over 4. And this 1 is underlined, so that means you're going to multiply this fraction by 1 over 1. Okay, so now we just multiply it across. So we have 1 times 7 over 1 times 4 times 4. You have 3 times 4 over 4 times 1 times 4. Which gives us 1 times 7 is 7. And 3 times 4 is 12 over 16. Okay? And just remember that if you have a faster way that you know to do this, by all means use that faster way, as long as it's correct. This is just a process that will help if the other processes that you use don't make a lot of sense, or you're just more comfortable. This is just another option. So if you have an option that to get like denominators that work faster and better for you, by all means, definitely use that method. Okay, so you have 7/16. You have the common like denominator and 3/4. You have 12/16. So now we rewrite. You have 2 7/16 plus 3/4. We're going to rewrite it as 2 7/16 plus, instead of 3/4, you have the equivalent fraction of 12/16. Okay, now that our denominators match, we add our whole numbers. So you have 2 plus 0, which is 2, and we add our fractions. 7 plus 12/16. Okay, so that gives you 2 19/16. Okay, now this actually can be simplified. And I'll show you how right here on the side. 19/16 is equal to 1 3/16 if we convert it. Now remember, a mixed number are just those two values added together. So 1 3/16 is 1 plus 3/16. Okay, so remembering that 19/16 is just 1 plus 3/16. 2 19/16 is just 2 plus 19/16. And what is 19/16? That's just 1 plus 3/16. So that's 2 plus 1 plus 3/16. So if we add our whole numbers, that's just 3 plus 3/16, which is 3 3/16. So this is equal to 3 3/16. All right, so it can be a little bit tricky, but as long as you remember how to separate your mixed numbers, that's the key behind it. It's just learning to separate your mixed numbers to get the answer that you want. All right, so if you are still writing this one, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. Okay, so what if we wanted to solve 4 1/8 minus 1 3/4? All right, so what I want you to do is press pause and try to solve this one on your own. Okay, so I'm assuming you've pressed pause and tried to solve this one. And you might have noticed that you ran into a little bit of a snag on this one. Okay, and the reason why is because, or you could have, hopefully you got it, but this is a borrowing problem. Okay, so you may run into this every once in a while. Okay, so first thing we want to do, just like before, is get our matching denominators. So rewrite fraction to get your least common denominators. Let me straighten that up a little bit. Here we go. Okay, so you're going to rewrite your fraction, just the fractional part, to get your least common denominator. Okay, so we see between 8 is equal to 4 times 2, and 4 is equal to 4 times 1. So just our fractional parts, you have 1/8, and you have 3/4. So rewrite that That's 1 over 4 times 2. And 3 over 4 times 1. Okay, so we see here you have a 4 here and a 4 there, so you're good. You have a 2 on this side, but you don't have 1 over here, so you're going to multiply this side by 2 over 2. So you have 1 over 4 times 2. And again, you don't have to do the 1 if you don't want to. So 3 over 4. And since that's underlined, you're going to multiply this side by 2 over 2. So that gives us 1 over 8. And 3 times 2 is 6. And 4 times 2 is 8. So these are our equivalent fractions with the matching denominators. All right, so far so good. But you have 4 and 1/8 minus 1 and 3/4. But using our equivalent fractions, that's 4 and 1/8, and 3/4 becomes 6/8. So minus 1 and 6/8. All right, so far so good. So you have 4 minus 1, which is 3. And here you have 1 minus 6 over 8. Okay, so 1 minus 6 will give us a negative number. We don't want negative numbers. So it's not positive. So we borrow. All right. Now, when you borrow, you're going to borrow from your top mixed number. Okay? And I'll do that right here on the side. And it's all, remember how we did before, it's all about separating your mixed number. So you have 4 and 1/8. Okay, that's our top value. So what we're going to do is we're going to get 1 from this whole number, and we're going to loan it. That fraction is going to borrow 1 from the whole number. So instead of 4, we're going to take 1 away. So you have 3 plus 1. Well, remember, this is just 4 plus 1/8. So that's first and foremost. So that 4 would just become 3 plus 1. So 3 plus 1 plus 1/8. Okay, so before, when we had those two combined, now we're going to combine these two. So that's 3 plus 1 and 1/8. And 1 and 1/8, 8 times 1 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So that's 3 plus 9 over 8, which is 3 and 9/8. So 4 and 1/8 is equal to 3 and 9/8. Okay, so now we're going to redo it, but we're going to replace that with 3 and 9/8. Okay, so we have 3 and 9/8 minus 1 and 6/8. Okay, so we subtract our whole numbers, 3 minus 1, which is 2. So we have 9 minus 6 over 8. So we have 2, 9 minus 6 is 3 over our common denominator of 8. So 4 and 1/8 minus 1 and 3/4 is equal to 2 and 3/8. Like I say, it gets a little bit tricky when you're talking about the borrowing, but a little bit of practice, it'll flow seamlessly. All right, so if you're still writing, feel free to press pause. But we have one more example we're going to go ahead and get through. All right, so what if we have 5 and 3/4 minus 1 over 12. Excuse me. All right, so what I want you to do is go ahead and press pause and try to solve this one on your own. All right, so assuming you've pressed pause, so let's go ahead and solve this one. Okay, so you have your least common denominator that we have to find. So you have 4, which is just 4 times 1. And you have 12, which is 4 times 3. So we have our fractional parts. So you have 3 over 4. You have 1 over 12. Okay, so we're going to rewrite those as 3 over 4 times 1 and 1 over 4 times 3. Okay, so these values match up, so you're good there. Okay, but you have a 1 here, but you don't have 1 over here. So remember, you don't have to do anything with the 1s if you don't want to. So I'll leave the 1 alone. But you have a 3 over here, but you don't have any 3 factors over here in your denominator. You're going to multiply this one by 3 over 3. Okay, so we have 3 over 4 times 1. Remember that 4 is circled. And we have 1 over 4 times 3. That 4 is circled. So that means since this is underlined, we're going to multiply this one by 3 over 3. And you could multiply this one by 1 over 1 if you wanted to, but it doesn't change it, so you don't really have to. Okay, so 3 times 3 is 9. Over 3 times 4 times 1 is just 12. And you have 1 over 4 times 3, so just 1 over 12. Okay, so 3 over 4 is equivalent to 9 over 12. And our 1 over 12 just stays 1 over 12 because it matches our least common denominator. All right, so now we replace them. So if we go back to our original 5 3/4 minus 1 over 12, we're going to rewrite that as 5 9 over 12 minus 1 over 12. Okay, and now we subtract. 5 minus 0 is 5, and you have 9 minus 1 over 12. Okay, so that's 5, and 9 minus 1 is 8 over 12. And this can be reduced because 8 over 12 is just 4 times 2 over 4 times 3. So anything divided by itself is just 1, which just leaves 2 over 3. So it's 5 and 2/3. All right, so that means that 5 3/4 minus 1 over 12 is 5 2/3. All right, so hopefully this made sense, and I will see you on the next video.